Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to play Spin the Bottle. Just kidding. Unless you want to. Okay. So we're going to, because everyone had a different scenario, I don't know if that was clear, but everyone had a different scenario. So now we're going to get to hear what all the scenarios were. And we want to try to keep this report back brief, because it's kind of the main things that you all came to. And we're going to start with team number 2.
Alright. Want to read the scenario too, or just talk?
Yeah.
Alright. Mike is an indigenous Otama.
Odom?
What she said. From what is now called South Phoenix.
You're out, right?
He is to pity and occupy Phoenix recently for several weeks. One day he voices in the General Assembly concerns with using the word occupy. Several white people jumped in immediately in defense of the term occupy, saying that the term is what unifies the movement. Our questions were, what are some concerns that Mike might have with the term occupy? What are some of the barriers to Mike being able to participate safely in this movement, and how could it turn out for him? We have concerns.
Let's make sure, did everyone understand the scenario? Okay.
Russo, you got a question?
The whole thing is that someone has a problem with the word occupy as it's being used at this point, is that correct?
Yeah, a specific someone.
At the beginning of the movement, what the existing term of occupation represents. Some were uncomfortable with the history, concerns about the dismissed, known history and shared facts, military context of it, to bring discussion.
Well, wondering if we can turn the loaded terminology around with the word occupy, and by being in solidarity with Occupy Wall Street, we feel that it was meant to be offensive to Occupy Wall Street, but that our communities makes it a little difficult for some. So maybe there's some room to change it in our communities, and maybe still be in solidarity with Occupy Wall Street. Look at it.
The second question on there was what barriers? Did you read the question? Okay, sorry, my brain. So the second question is what barriers could there be? And we talked about, let's go ahead. Okay, about how in the scenario people reacted with defensiveness to the concerns that were raised, and how we could respond differently, right?
Yeah, we're talking fundamentally about that it's perfectly legitimate if you want to defend the use of the word occupy, or if you oppose the use of the word occupy, but that we have to be more open to understanding where people come from, and certainly not being dismissive, but beyond that, I like the idea of curiosity. Somebody mentioned curiosity too. When somebody thinks it's a bad idea, don't just be willing to listen to them and then kind of pass it over. Really be curious about why, and really get into that, and be willing to have a more detailed discussion about it, I guess. And realizing that just because we're not creating it from an offensive position, and we're not doing it as an offense to anyone, doesn't mean it can't have that connotation, or that those concerns are most valid.
I remember this coming up in one of the emails talking about Occupy and what happened, but I don't remember what they came to. They came to an accommodation, but I just don't remember what it was, and I was wondering if there is any information on that, because they did come to an accommodation.
Does anyone know?
I know.
I don't know which Occupy did it, but there was one occupation
that threw its weight and support behind a decolonize the 99% activity, and that was part of the compromise that allowed the folks who are uncomfortable with the term occupy to make peace with it and allow occupiers to still use it.
Some, I know in some occupations, they're not occupies, they're unoccupy. Like in Hawaii, there's unoccupy Maui, unoccupy Honolulu, and respect for the indigenous cultures there.
There's some groups that call themselves occupy/decolonize. Like I think Austin's that way, and in the Bay Area it's that way, and then unoccupy. Was there a third question?
How did things turn out differently?
What could have happened in that scenario?
One of the things I suggested was to acknowledge the history of it, of the word occupy, what it would mean to the people of that community, to go out, and for people that were not aware of what it would be, to do community educational events, and to move forward with both communities embracing the word and making a new connotation for it in the future, while still acknowledging what it meant in the past.
And specifically, like in the moment, someone comes up and says, hey, I am a little uncomfortable with this term occupy, like, you know, it has kind of a negative connotation for me and my family. How would you respond to that positively?
I would look at it as similar to what has transpired recently in Miami, where they were in the apartment building, and the last news report I saw was of apartment dwellers that were there before the Occupy got there, who were saying, hey, these people are drug addicts, terrible, we don't want them, they're occupying us, we don't want any of that.
I would probably ask, well, why are you uncomfortable with it? What about it is making you uncomfortable? And then respond according to whatever their response is. Because you don't have enough information to make a response.
Yeah, you said the first part of I was going to say, I think that it's an opportunity to start a dialogue about the language that we choose to use in the collective and how that is probably never going to perfectly meet the needs of every single member of the collective, but it's an ongoing process of dialogue between the members individually and collectively to determine what we label ourselves and how that affects us and people who have not chosen to affiliate themselves with the collective.
I was going to say something similar to acknowledge that it's a concern of that person, and that's the first thing that might be done, and then ask why. Acknowledge that it's a concern to that person, and and then start the conversation. Maybe start by saying that is a good point, or that is a good concern, and then ask why do you think that?
One more.
I think we should always recognize too that if it's a concern to any one person, it should be a concern to all of us in terms of thinking about the way this is that.
I think the key thing in this situation is remembering what courage it took for that person to speak up, right? Because especially knowing if they're in an environment where they know people may not know what they're talking about or where they're coming from. And most important thing is ask. Before anything else, before responding, before telling you why, right? That changes everything. Because then that person has a chance to explain, you get a chance to learn, they feel heard, and then once it's out there, then you can move on. You can discuss, right? Okay.
I just want to add, chances are that person who's speaking up is probably representing an opinion a lot of other people who may not speak up actually feel. So when we're talking about valuing that one person's opinion, we're really probably valuing a lot of people's opinions.